And so on and so on. And so on and so on. And so on and so on.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, mate. How you going?
I'm good. We're just dropping down quickly before we roll the Žižek interview. Just a few notes, just to say hello. Back in Australia.
Yep, it's all over. I've bitten from the
It's all
apple.
over. We did a Žižek and So On conference festival in New York last week.
Mm-hmm.
Few Žižek events. Got to hang out with him, and it was mostly him talking to you about Australia.
Yeah, as it should be. Yeah, as the Australian correspondent for all things related to Žižek.
He knew a lot of very obscure things about it that had nothing to do with philosophy or anything.
Seafaring and mutiny and life on the seas. Yeah.
He was like, "Did you notice?" And then just like completely go off in a different direction. It's like, no, Žižek, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. And then we sat down to interview him also in New York.
Yeah, a few days later, we talked a bit about how the neighborhood has changed, like Little Italy isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find some good matzo ball soup.
That's right. All right. So big thanks to Russ Sabriglia and Todd McGowan and Žižek.
Russ put the whole thing together in Seton Hall, and thanks Russ for joining us on the podcast. Todd, great seeing Todd. He was wearing a fantastic outfit. True to himself with the Bengals t-shirt.
Yeah.
And thanks to Žižek for joining us. And anything else we should add? Any notes? Anything coming up? We have a Patreon if you want some more episodes, you want access to the Discord community, and if you want to support the podcast.
Cool. Should we roll the episode?
You sound excited enough. Is this good? Okay, let's roll the interview.
I think so. Let's roll the interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. See ya.
Okay. Do you see me? Do you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
I see you and I hear you. I will just regulate the sound. My sound is on. Okay. Where are you? In Brooklyn or where?
We're in Chinatown in Manhattan.
You told me this in your yeah. But you know that Chinatown is a weird place. I don't know if it's still like that, but I read years ago that it's so self-enclosed that almost 70%, 3/4 of the Chinese people there, less than one time per year leave Chinatown area. They treat it totally as their own village. But you know which is a pure tourist trap? Okay, not so bad. You know, if you go north from Chinatown, you enter a Little Italy.
Yeah.
But you know that this is just for tourists. The true Italians are in Brooklyn, or where?
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning, that Chinatown feels like an actual neighborhood and Little Italy is just completely like a dead area, it feels like.
It's just those restaurants, blah, blah, but it's, again, practically no Italians there. And you know what's the irony? I like these racist cliches, but which are true in this case. Do you know, wait a minute, I want to put it more like this. Yes. Do you know that the mafia part in Brooklyn is I was told so, practically the safest part in New York? Because mafia wants it for itself. If you are attacked there, mafia takes care, not police. Okay, sorry. Let's not lose time. Sorry. Let's first just clarify. You tell me what you want. Okay, I know what I want. I ask myself, like 50 to 100 million. to live comfortably. But okay, beyond that, what do you want now?
I guess we were just wanting to discuss your trip here, your book, and in fact, you opened your conversation last night by saying in Slovenia you have a joke where in an interview it only takes asking you one question.
Yeah.
So I guess my question would be, what can Christian atheism tell us about our present moment, and why have you chosen now for such an intervention?
That's a nice, difficult question. Screw you, how should you know? No, first, I hope I made something clear. I'm totally, unambiguously an atheist. I don't play any games there, you know. Maybe there is a higher dimension. Even you can use it, but I like to say too much and annoy people. Years ago, I was at Berkeley, San Francisco, and I visited their house. By there, I mean Judith Butler and Wendy Brown. And I asked the two of them, we were just debating, sitting behind the table, this brutal question, you know, like, okay, cut the bullshit about religious discourse, great, it can be an inspiration, blah, blah. Do you believe or not that there is something like God? Typically, Wendy, who is, I think, more harsh leftist, Wendy immediately said no. But Judith didn't want to say no. They said something like, oh, I don't know, there is something so deep in Jewish spirituality and so on and so on, you know. So again, I want first to clarify this point. Now, the big problem is this one, and I address it in my book. And this is very problematic for some people. Can't materialism stand on its own? Because my big thesis is that it doesn't work if you directly assert materialism. You know, like it seems obvious that it should work. Like you just state your position. Why do we need a detour through Christianity? And my point is that, of course, objectively in the sense of with regard to content, of course, you can say, I don't think there is a higher spiritual entity, blah, 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 and all that. But as for subjectivity, you need to do it. Why? Okay, my general thesis is clear. I don't want to dwell too long on it because everybody knows this. Everybody who knows my work. It's that my point is not we have Christianity and then some idiots like me who try to give an atheist twist to it. My point is more radical, that Christianity is in itself the religion of atheism. Its basic content, following Hegel, is that what dies on the cross is not a messenger of God, in the sense of God is up there, he sends his son, we crucify him, then God says, okay, this time it didn't work, come son, come back to me and I'll try another time or what. That Hegel says this literally. What dies on the cross is the God of beyond itself, himself, however you put it. And that all that remains, as I repeat it all the time, is Holy Spirit, which is egalitarian community of believers, which, that's the catch, and Hegel also said it. In this community of believers, you don't need another external entity into which you believe, like we are all united in believing in something, blah, blah, blah. Belief itself is nothing more than belief in a community of believers. And it's in the same sense that I mentioned yesterday, the case of Marxist revolutionary stance, and even the case of love. When you say I believe, it simply means I am not alone in my belief. I believe in a community of people who believe in their engagement. So, but nonetheless, to make this logic clear, because again, you can say, okay, but why don't I state this directly? Why the tour through God? You find a more detailed argumentation in my book, but what I want to say is something else. I will give you, I think I use it in the book, a simple example. I used it years ago, but now I want to apply it to belief. You know that Hegel, in his phenomenology, has this famous infinite state, so-called infinite statement. His example is there, that of vulgar materialism phrenology, the spirit is a bone. Why is this an infinite statement? Of course, Hegel knows it's a pure tension, contradiction, like you identify spirit, which is immaterial, subtle, not even in the idealist sense, but in the sense of spirit is all, plasticity, ambiguity, and so on. And then you say it's a bone, the most inert part of the body, blah, blah. So how does Hegel work here? His point is not just some kind of paradox, opposite. To resolve the paradox of what Hegel claims here is you must include into the statement your subjective reaction to it. Like, what's your reaction to if somebody says spirit is a bone? You feel it as the ultimate nonsense contradiction. That's absurd. This contradiction is the subject. You see my point? This contradiction is the subject. And in the same sense, only if you get the absurdity of Christianity, and because the Christian version of spirit is a bone is God, the universal creator of the universe, is that idiot, dirty, ordinary man who was walking 2,000 years ago in Palestine on land, an ordinary dirty man, and so on. And again, the whole point is to maintain, to keep this contradiction. That's how you arrive at subjectivity. So why does this have some meaning today? Because here I partially agree with Brother Cornell, and he was right in adding something to my description. In a Hegelian way, we should always ask, what are the types of subjectivity, the types of subjective existence available to us today? We have this one predominant, but not exclusive, is direct, vulgar. I don't want to say vulgar, scientific materialism, which is science, neuronal science, evolutionism, can do everything, and all that comes to the top of it, sense of freedom, duty, spirituality, is, as they say, user's illusion. Then, here, Cornell was right when he added that people in our spontaneous sense understanding we cannot accept it. So here enter either new forms of pseudo-oriental spirituality in the sense of, but nonetheless, to accept this, we have to somehow self-annihilate ourselves. And here, I want to draw your or our listeners' attention to the guy who was really interesting here, Thomas Metzinger. I wrote about him in my Parallax View more than 10 years ago. He is a German, not so much brain scientist as brain philosopher, who claims that neuronal science teaches us that there is no self, that self is just a user's illusion, that all that there really is this flux of phenomena, experiences regulated by neuronal networks. And now the predominant stance in neuronal science is that the awareness of self as user's illusion, like we spontaneously experience ourselves as free agents, that it's a necessary illusion. Like in the same sense, that's even a metaphor used by some of the guys. We look at the sun and see it as not even very big yellow ball or circle, whatever in the sky. Now we rationally know very well that it's bigger than Earth, blah, 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 everything. But nonetheless, we still experience it as something you look up and you know, something that rises in the morning, goes down in the evening, and so on. So they claim it is the same with the illusion of our spiritual freedom. As Metzinger puts it, we cannot really subjectivize it in the sense that we experience ourselves as non-existing without self. We necessarily dwell in this illusion. But Metzinger adds, there is one exception, radical Buddhist meditation. When you renounce yourself, when you accept your void, there you get a subjective experience which is the result of neuronal sciences. I like this beautiful paradox, how what one would have thought is the most alien to Oriental spirituality, Buddhist, not Hinduist, that's another point. Today's reductionist neuronal sciences, that their ideal subjective supplement is the self-annihilation, not destruct, but in the sense of you learn to perceive yourself as non-existing, that you don't have a substantial sense, or as they like to put it, intelligent Buddhists, what you arrive at in meditation is thought without a thinker. You experience your thoughts, but you somehow really subjectively accept that these thoughts don't have a substantial bearer, called, for example, subject, self, or whatever. So we have these options. Then we have fundamentalists, those who want to return to some pre-modern tradition. Concerning them, for me, complications begin. I didn't have the time to develop this yesterday in my debate with Cornel West, because, more and more I think that although they appear to do full fanatics, most of the so-called religious fundamentalists are, maybe not subjectively, but nonetheless in a deeper unconscious sense, bluffing. The model for me is, okay, with him it's obvious. Donald Trump. He acts as if return to Christian values, again abortion, and so on and so on. But sorry, that's not the way he acts in his subjectivity. He's the utter caricature of a postmodern clown who makes jokes about himself and so on and so on. Then there is another point which I think was most important but got lost yesterday, which I elaborated in one of my, I think, Substack texts. My friend Alex from South Korea gave me this idea where he says that now in South Korea, the big trend among young generation, okay, you have minorities, fundamentalists, people who are engaged for the left, but the large majority of young people are entering a state of indifference to global social issues and so on. And I mentioned that movie, I forgot the title, by Perfect Life, by Wim Wenders. It's the story, it takes place in Japan, about an ordinary guy. I think he has a very ordinary job, something to do with cleaning the trash, whatever. And that's all. He doesn't get engaged in anything. He meets not even many friends. He has his small satisfaction, and nothing bothers him. He doesn't relate to global social traumas and so on. And I'm told that now this is the ultimate, maybe even predominant stance among the younger generation today in South Korea and in Japan. There is even something beautiful about it. Because from what I hear now about Japan, you know, the latest economic news, Japan was now overtaken by Germany. Even if Germany is in a relative crisis, they now became nonetheless the third strongest industrial power in the world. It's United States, China, and then Germany comes. But why? There is no big crisis in Japan. They just, the younger generation and even the society as in its entirety, they, which is even in some sense a beautiful stance, they stopped to care. Why should we develop ourselves? Why should we progress, expand? Why not just enjoy life? And I was told by my Japanese friends that this is felt at everyday life. They enjoy their ordinary life, which is nice for them, haha, not too poor, but not too rich also. And their desires are not, let's change the world, big problems. There is an explosion now in Japan of these small pleasures, like new forms of paper objects, like the tiny notebooks and so on, or hangers to hang your clothes and so on. You know, they are fully invested in these details. So maybe that's their theory of these people. Kojev, the reader of Hegel, was right when he was looking for the end of history. First, he thought it's Stalinism. Then he thought it's Japan, with their, in the 1960s, this soft culture. Now, maybe we are returning to that the new subjectivity emerging in South Korea and Japan, more than here in the States, is the ultimate form of the end of history. Like, forget about large history, but we have something of the same, I claim. I've written about this years ago. What interests me very much is this, I hate them, but they're important. This, how should I call them? Stupid everyday life, usually comic, half dramatic, half comic series like Friends and so on. Even that stupid one, The Big Bang, whatever. It's a group of people, and it entirely focuses on their daily problems. Maybe you get ill, maybe you fall in love, you have some small trouble here, there, but it's no longer a story in which a larger historical dilemma or echoes. It's just this daily life, small things. Even Seinfeld is this. No big history there, just everyday small troubles. You know that Hegel announced this in his Aesthetics, where he asked what would be the art after the end of history, at the end of history. And his idea is it will be the art about ordinary humanity. Things happen, but they have no deep historical significance. It's not, for example, this was typical big historical modernism. You have a conflict, but behind this conflict is maybe ecological struggle, is there a catastrophe, or I don't know, racism or whatever. No, we are just happy in our small community. I think this is a deeply illusionary stance. You know, like, because the mega problems are approaching, they will hit us. So I'm not against this stance for a priori reasons. I just think that we are approaching a generalized emergency state, and we are just postponing that. So again, religious commitment enters, for me, commitment. When you decide that, no, you have to make a stance. Can I go on a little bit? Because in my last text for Substack, I developed something which will be very problematic for many idiots. I referred to a movie and a novel, John Le Carré, The Little Drummer Girl. You know that there are two versions, the movie from 1984 and the TV miniseries, 6 parts from a couple of years ago, where Florence Pugh plays the heroine, who is ordinary everyday person convinced by Israeli secret police to act for them. It's a complex story, but the point is that she is, as an Israeli agent, she is, or she pretends to enter in with a Palestinian terrorist group, becomes even half sincerely in love with Khalil, a great terrorist. And the thing that I really like is that at the end, of course, she betrays him. They spend the night together in a suburban hut, and then the guy in the morning, it's a wonderful scene, looks around and sees that something is wrong. Because usually in the morning, he hears cars passing by, or since it's countryside, the sound of cows, of dogs, everything is silent. So Khalil, guesses that she betrayed him. And then comes a beautiful, for me, very sublime ending. He grabs again, but he doesn't take revenge. He's not perplexed by her. He asks her, but why did you do this? Are you a Jew against us Muslims? Are you a Christian? Did they bribe you? Did they blackmail you? And she says, no, it was just like nothing substantial. And then he does something very surprising. He approaches her, not to kill her, beat her. He just puts his hand on her face gently and says, but you simply don't believe in anything. You have no cause. I'm sorry for you. And then he steps back. But you see what, and is immediately shot by Israeli agents who enter the hut. But what I find is horrible, so profound, is that when he asks her, are you a Jew? Were you blackmailed? Were you bribed? He is looking in a positive sense for some kind of positive reason, cause. And this would even make it easier for him, like, are you human? Don't you believe in anything? And when he sees that she is a totally flat person who doesn't believe. He even says, I am a nobody. And he feels sorry for her, not killing her. Now, of course, in this case, I'm not crazy. I don't believe in his Khalil's, the hero's terrorist cause. But I think this is an authentic moment. Libidinally or subjectively, I am on his side. This type of indifference should terrify us. Sorry, I was too long ago.
A discussion of Christian atheism makes one think of the God that might be there that the atheist doesn't believe in. I wonder if you could comment on that. Who is the God that the atheist doesn't
my
believe in?
position is the exact opposite, as I didn't have a chance to explain yet. You know in what sense? My ultimate enemy are a different type of Christian atheists. Those who say, listen, we rationally know God doesn't exist, but nonetheless, we find many beautiful images, also ethically profound, correct in Christianity. So can't we just keep the Christian ideas without the theological foundation? This is what I want to avoid. This type of, and Nietzsche was already aware of it. How? A certain type of atheism really doesn't undermine religion. Religious edifice survive, but just in this form where its foundation is subtracted from it. You know, this typical attitude, I don't believe in Christianity, but my God, we need it as an ideal because there are so many beautiful, sublime notions in it, and so on and so on. I precisely don't want to follow this track. This brings me back to, I'm so sorry I didn't have more time to develop this in the book. This brings me back to what I really like in Gospels. Whatever you think about them, isn't it clear that Christ is absolutely not a person of wisdom? He is a madman. He always radicalizes the thing. He never goes into this type of wisdom. You know, everything ends up in ash. What goes up must come down, and so on. There is a certain fanatical, even madness in him. Not only this, there is also, I think, I'm following Kierkegaard here. There is also a comical dimension on it, in the sense that maybe we should read, in the most respectful way, Gospels as a comical text. What do I mean by this? You know what is the standard discursive strategy of Gospels? Christ preaching to his apostles or people he tries to convince. Christ makes some statements. Then, of course, people don't understand them. So he says, okay, I will explain it to you with a parable, with a story. But this parable story, like the Good Samaritan or whatever, is so confusing that you understand it even less. So you have to return to his statement to trying to understand the parable. And this mixture of the two, the general thesis and the parable, is so complex. Usually, parable does not simply illustrate the general point, but even subtly subverts it, annihilates it. It's a clear moment of a certain, no, it's not comedy in the sense you die laughing of it, but a certain, okay, maybe I'll reach the term sarcastic irony. You know, what Christ is doing is he's proposing the general thesis, then he's saying, okay, here we have a story to understand it, but this story puts in another direction. And that's the big problem of reading Christianity. You know, That's what I find, again, so fascinating, because what horrifies me unconditionally, absolutely, are precisely Christians who reduce it to wisdom, like don't get too engaged and so on. That's why, if I may add another point, that's why I think, sorry, that's why I think the most anti-Christian stance you can imagine, and I've written about it in my other previous books, is this disgusting comparison, because the big problem of Christianity, even more than of other religions, is there is a benevolent, paternal, divine figure who takes care of us and guarantees that at the end all will end well. Why then do all these horrors happen in our lives? Colonialism, Gulag, Holocaust, go on. And the horror here that I try to avoid is to use, it's disgusting, but it's regularly used still, this metaphor of a painting. The idea is, take a beautiful painting. If you look from too close a distance to it, you see just a stain, just formless stain, not formless, but meaningless. But if you step back, you see that what you thought that it was a stain is in reality an element which, observed or located into its totality, the whole of painting contributes to its harmony. So then you can imagine in what terrifying direction the story goes. What if what we humans, from our finite perspective, experience as horror, in a way unknown to us, because we are not able to step back into divine perspective, contributes to global harmony? I think that if there is any meaning in Christian compassion, it means that precisely such a gesture should be prohibited. You cannot say, oh, even when some Jews are saying it, Holocaust or Shoah was horrible, but maybe from a larger divine perspective, it served a good purpose. The truly horrible thing is that even some Christians are doing this. Sorry, some Jews, some extremely fundamentalist Zionist Jews claim Hitler played a positive role. Because the problem with Jews was that throughout 19th century, Jehovah was reminding them it's time to return to your home, to Palestine. And they didn't want to follow the divine appeal. So the function of Hitler, of the Holocaust, was to make it clear to them, Europe is no longer a place for you. You have to return to your original land of Israel. I find that reading extremely obscene. I think that in this gap between your particular experience of horror and the general view of how everything has meaning and so on, Christianity is absolutely on the side of your particular suffering. The whole point of Christianity is that there is no universal harmony which justifies the horror of a particular suffering. Which is why I will give you another example, almost my favorite. I'm moving so low now to the lowest of the lowest, but I'm not afraid. Did you see? No, I didn't yet mention it to you. The movie A River Runs Through It, I think, directed by Robert Redford. In it, it's not a great movie, it's bullshit. Brad Pitt plays a guy who is self-destructive. He always gets in problems. Everybody knows this will end badly, and true. at the end of the movie, he is found beaten to death. And in a funeral, a priest says something very intelligent. He says, what is the Christian attitude when you see somebody obviously destroying him or herself? And it's also obvious that you cannot prevent it. The message is not, no, you should try to, you see, this guy is destroying himself. His point is that all you can do is to still maintain that your message should be, I know what you are doing, but even in this situation, you have my full love, compassion. Not compassion in the sense of I will desperately try to, you accept this. This is, I think, this acceptance of despair, defeat, is the other side of Christianity also. I don't think you find it in any other religions. I talk too much. Please go on.
This kind of existential or subjective transformation that you're talking about with Christianity, is this the kind of real materialist core that you're getting at?
Yeah, it is. You know, in what sense? Because as I try to develop in this book and already in my previous book, of course, we are part of reality. I mean, I literally, at the level of literal truth, I believe in evolutionary biology. We are a stupid space on this earth. We gradually developed out of something like apes and so on. No problem here. But I nonetheless think that every scientific account of our origin remains a fiction. Not a fiction, let's be careful, not a fiction in the sense of, but in reality there is a deeper spirituality. It's just that, and even quantum physics accepts this, that it's always from our standpoint. Mm-hmm. We cannot step on our shoulder and look at us objectively. So then science, precisely when it comes closer to the real, in the sense of the way the world really is, outside our subjective perception, science is, I think, the closest to symbolic fiction. Look, which is the big candidate today for this objective account? General relativity but the two, we know all the trouble cannot be combined, and especially quantum mechanics. What do you get there? You get a series of formulas which work very well, but which are totally abstract, human-made mathematical formulas. You are simply unable to translate them into your concrete daily experience. You cannot understand them, because I use here the term understanding in a very precise way. You have a certain everyday experience of life around you, and understanding means you can translate scientific theories into your everyday experience. You cannot do it. So, because again, you are irreducibly rooted in the singularity of your experience. So, the only way to step out of fiction is something, I'm shameless here, is not the Oriental type of mysticism, but an element of mysticism which is, I claim, so I will be condemned for Eurocentrism, which developed in late medieval time Rhine, you know, the river Rhine in Germany, the so-called Rhenian mysticism, Rhine mystics, Meister Eckhart, then Jacob Böhme, and so on. And they did something absolutely incredible. Their point was that man is not just the result caused by God, but the movement is always retroactive. God becomes fully God only through being reborn in man. So you have a certain zero level where you don't exist, but God also doesn't exist. That's as close as we come to, in Lacan terms, to what we call real. So my position is that this element of what mystics called night of the world, not the old mystical big revelation, son, you immerse yourself into God, no, but a much more terrifying zero level where there is neither God nor you. This is the zero level of our experience, which is in some sense more fundamental than science. Science, great as it is, and I'm a mega believer in science, it marginally always remains a fiction. And we can experience this today. I'm following with such a pleasure quantum mechanics and so on. And you know what surprises me? It's crazy, again and again. How quantum mechanics, the most successful science of all times, but now almost everything is possible to say there. It's obviously at some level that it's a fiction, because do you know that now you can claim it's the latest fashion, not in a bad sense, that there was no Big Bang. There was just some primordial oscillation, there are repeated Big Bangs and so on. So you have so many radically different options which are considered. I think that, again, a beautiful Lacanian paradox. When we approach the real, we encounter fictions. Sorry, you, the bearded guy. I always, in your troika, identify you with, sorry, it's bad taste. You must be with your beard, which is longer than mine. You are my ISIS friend there, or Hamas. You are my fundamentalist there. You know? Please add this, and then, sorry, I have to stop like this feet, yes. But please, let's conclude with ISIS. Yeah.
So in the three-body problem, one of the refrains is that the past isn't over. So I was wondering how quantum physics allows us to read history, and what was it about quantum physics for you? I know you've written about it
that's
for
a beautiful question. Now. I'm writing a new book about it. What quantum physics elaborates with all the topic of collapse and so on, this is the latest fashion. Not changing the past in the magical sense of, no, at certain brutal level, what happened, happened. But the symbolic weight of what happened can be radically changed. And my problem is this one, that till now the evolutionary historicism nonetheless acted as if we are today at some point from which we can, in a privileged way, reconstruct the past. Marxism claimed this, that the antinomies of capitalism provide the key for the entire history of humanity and so on, or in physics. But what if we are today precisely in such a position of what quantum physics calls multiple superpositions? We are in a situation where we don't know what retroactively, the French have a wonderful expression for this, the temporality of futur antérieur. The past is not there. The past will have been. At a future point, it will be determined what the past is. For example, for Marx, the past is this stages of development of productive forces, but as Marx himself emphasizes, this is from the standpoint of capitalism, which is not necessary. Capitalism could have been avoided, but once it is here, it proposes a certain image of the past. And the problem I have with Marx is that he still thought that, to put it very naively, that this progressive image that he proposes is objectively true. I don't think. I think we live in an ambiguous, open situation. We don't know what will have been. Maybe a new form of soft fascism will win, and by this I don't mean Nazism. I mean precisely states, it's horrible to say this, like China, Singapore, and so on, states which have a dynamic capitalist economy, but controlled by a strong state and usually nationalist ideology. Because that's where fascism is winning today. Fascism means modernization controlled by tradition, although this tradition is, as a rule, invented. So again, to answer precisely your question, I think that it's crucial to see today's situation not just as uncertain in the sense that we never know, there may be a catastrophe, but uncertain in the sense of there are multiple superposition, multiple, let's put it in a very naive way, global, universal narratives competing. And the struggle is, in this sense, not only for the future, but for the past also. Sorry, I'm collapsing. I had to stop now. We'll do it again. I'm very grateful that you find this time, because now I have to run to another meeting. Please do this. As I always say, and I don't mean it as a joke, please do your Stalinist duty and cut off some stupid parts and so on, you know. If there is something I don't believe in, is the true direct inner self-expression. If you do this, you get all the fit and confusion. It has to be tempered and regulated. Thanks very much, and I hope some point in the future we meet again. You have my contact, I have your contact.
Of course, thank you very much.
Are you enjoying life? Are you often going to some city places there in Chinatown? You know what I like? With all my critique of Israel, but it's so difficult to get. I like the traditional East European Jewish food, like matzo ball soup, pastrami, but it's more and more difficult to get it.
We go on Second Avenue in the East Village for some Ukrainian Jewish food. There's still some of that over there.
Really?
Yeah.
Where? Sorry, Second Avenue, and at what levels?
Second and between 6th and 7th, or 7th and 8th. I forget which block. Yeah.
That's perfect.
I can send you. I'll send you the restaurant. It's a very nice.
No problem. I will find it, because I know it's even called that place Little Ukraine. No.
Yeah.
And I just go. I am now Waverly Place Hotel, 7th Street.
It's called B1. B1.
What? The name of the place?
Yeah, B1.
Very good that you told me this. Okay. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks to Ram.
Bye, Slavoj.
And so on and so on. 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 And so on and so on.